Well, it was in my childhood days. Oh Lord, many long years ago. Now with the Spirit, now of my Savior, I was filled, Lord filled, oh, in that fashion meeting.
I think if I was talking to like my grandparents or like, someone that doesn't know much about surfing, I always end up back at this place where I kind of interpret myself as like a contractor. I'm like a contractor like my dad was, but what I do is a bit different, and my clients are a bit different. That's like kind of the fun of it for me, is like trying to simplify the complexity of having to do a lot of different things in order to make it work. I think my career has obviously been really super unique. It wasn't really intentional when it started, like I didn't intentionally pursue certain sponsorships or certain relationships. It just kind of naturally came through my relationship with God, and meeting people that had shared that same passion, but also were creatively inspiring. People like Brian Bent, Scotty Stopnick, and Mitch Absher. Mitch is a huge influence in my life. I'm just super grateful for those friendships, and through that time, and that kind of helped shape and mold a little bit of who and what I've chosen to do. It's even hard to say it's a career because it's like been so all over the place. I'm like, whoa, like I thought this was going to be this way and that was going to be that way, and I'd be in a much different place as a surfer and all of that. And God's been faithful to show me that that's not necessarily what he had for me, and it's actually been better than I would have assumed it to be. It was early in my college years that I started getting opportunities to surf for brands. And once I kind of like started working with other companies, I always tried to have some creative element in my relationship with them. Whether it was like, hey, I can shoot photos for you guys, or hey, like I can screen print some one-off shirts for your t-shirt brand, or just always wanted to have my fingers on the design aspects of some of the brands I've worked with. So all that stuff was like just a real huge opportunity as a brand ambassador to be kind of more involved in the actual kind of living, breathing side of a company as opposed to just being like someone who represents it. Being a creative kind of comes first. Art was always like kind of my first passion, drawing and painting, and then eventually shooting photos. Looking back, even when I was a kid, my dad always brought one of those VHS cameras everywhere we went. It's something that like I picked up on at a young age, and I think surfing has always inspired more creativity. And so if I surf and then kind of lend to something creative, they kind of go hand in hand. When I was given the opportunity to start riding for Christensen, first day I got on Chris's boards, he gave me a quiver. Do you want to try this, this, and this? Like, here you go. Put me in this like really ramped up time where I'm like, I'm gonna drive to where I can ride this board. Like, I'll drive 3 hours to surf this specific board. It's just a really exciting time. Really cool, very like eye-opening, and it's just been such a huge blessing, I think is the best way to put it, or opportunity for me to like really develop my surfing in a lot more ways, you know? To be able to bring like design to a brand is, you know, I don't know, it's something that's come naturally to me. So in a way, I think maybe like shaping was kind of a natural part of like, you know, writing for someone who is a shaper, because it's like I can really respect their craft and I really understand it. But I'm not trying to like make that my business. So that's the cool thing, is like, I'm like, well, I want to try I want to see what a diamond tail would do with this nose template. And it's like one of those things where I can make one of them, ride it a bunch, and sell it used for what it cost me to make it, and make another. And so that's been like the formula we've had for the last, like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. I started reaching out to brands as a couple. And so I started to kind of look at it from the perspective of like, well, if I bring my wife and she shoots a few photos, then she can come on the trip and the brand's happy. And it became really a very vital part of who I am, because my wife enjoys sometimes surfing more than I do. And I'm grateful for that, to have a wife that wants to do the things that I love to do and is adventurous enough to put herself in like Canadian waters. I think that's been a catalyst for where we were striving to get up until the plane crash. April 20th, 2017, we were in a small plane crash. The Lord promises to work all things for the good. And so, given those adverse kind of freak accidents, things that like you really shouldn't walk away from, this circumstance was definitely one of those. You know, we crashed upside down. We hit a tree at 70 feet, grabbed the undercarriage of the plane. We hit, I think, nose first. We were knocked unconscious. The doors were open in the plane, so branches and things like that had come through the plane, and we ended up upside down. I came to with a severely broken right hand, and bones and things were really out of place, and I couldn't figure out. I had a head injury, fractured my left orbital and split my lip, and ended up, kind of my lip was hanging off. It looked really bad. And my wife broke her neck, back, and arm. She happened to be with me, helping me shoot photos and video. I've always looked at it as seasons, The injury was a season, and then the recovery process was a whole nother season. And, God was faithful through the crash. He was faithful through the recovery. He's been faithful now with blessing us with a child. And those chapters, I think, molded and shaped me into more of like the character that God wants me to have. The plane crash was one of those things where I could say it was a turning point in my life. It's actually really still a really relevant topic, given the reality of I haven't fully recovered. And, there's just certain injuries that, kind of make things more difficult in some ways, but then you just adapt. It's like my dad always used to say, improvise, adapt, overcome. I've learned to improvise and deal with like certain parts of my body that haven't recovered in the ways that I wish they would have. I don't know, it's kind of made things a lot sweeter. I just value surfing so much more, just the purity of it, just going out and riding a wave. because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do that anymore. You start to realize that your body's designed to heal and mend and restore, and it's just an amazing thing to see what you can go through, things that you never think you could ever conquer. You just I don't know, you kind of come through them and you're like, well, I don't want to ever go through that again, but in some ways you're grateful for what you've been through. The timing of having a son and having new life in my life was so crazy, so beautiful and such a blessing. We had Ryder 4 months before my dad passed away. For the last 10 years, I've taken care of my dad. He had dementia, and it's full time. Every day was different. Some days were good, some days weren't, and those days that were hard, I could kind of set things aside, or I could go surf to clear my head and come home and give him what he deserved. It was an opportunity to give back to him, and I don't think a lot of people get that opportunity in their life. My dad got to meet my son 2 weeks after he was born. He was able to hold him, and we got a photo together. Really a special moment, but the very next morning my dad fell and broke his hip, and had surgery, and 4 months later got pneumonia and passed away. Such a crazy shift of emotions to have new life in the home, and to see my son who's growing, and see my dad who's been deteriorating for so long, and kind of the change of emotions and the change of just life. I don't know, still interpreting it. There's going to be a time where I get to see him again, healthy and renewed, and in a new body in heaven. And so I look forward to that. Taught me to do a lot of the things that I love to do, ride motorcycles and shoot guns and, go surfing. He taught me to surf. And so to glean from that, and now to be able to share that with my son, something I'm excited to do, but it's something I've been really grateful for. Having a son has been just an amazing new chapter in my life, a new start, a new beginning, an opportunity to share all the things that my dad shared with me. There's a new priority, right? When you have a kid, you have to provide. And so for me, that's been a priority. If it's time away, it's time well spent, because it's going to come back to my wife being able to give Ryder what he needs, what my dad was able to do for me. I see guys that have been around surfing a long time, a lot longer than me, and I now have a greater respect for their journey through it. The ups and downs, the highs and lows, the different brands that maybe they've worked with. Guys like the Malloys that I have tons of respect for because of just the way they live their life, doing their family things, and see the brands that they're a part of and the way that they've been able to live and maintain their lifestyle, and have a respect for it, and say, okay, these guys have been everywhere, and yet they love where they're at now more than they've probably ever have. And I think that's where I'm trying to be. I'm grateful for the brands that have supported me and open to whatever the next chapter is, but I'm also really content with where I'm at. There's that verse, godliness with contentment is great gain. God's always had his hand in my life. He's been really faithful, and all the trials and tribulations I've been through, to be able to surf every day, to be able to have enough to survive, and he's always provided. I have a great house, a great family. I have an abundance. It's just been a really sweet thing.